That's a load of science.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of That's a Lot of Science, the podcast for science enthusiasts. Today, we have with us an amazing guest, Kunal Sampat from California. He is a great expert of clinical trials and drug developments. He has 20 years of experience of uh, different areas in different companies for different aspects of clinical trials. And he's here with us today to talk about how the new technology are changing the game in the clinical trial field and how this is going to improve the efficiency and make clinical trial better. So, first of all, Kunal, thank you very much for being with us today. And as I always like to do with my guest, I leave the stage to you to introduce yourself, to talk a little bit about your background and your experience and your current focus. So please, Kunal.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here with you. So, my background has been in engineering and computer science. That's kind of where I started my educational journey. And I've been in clinical trials since graduation, so about 20 years, like you said. A majority of my experience has been on the sponsor side. I did work with a CRO for a couple of years, but then I transitioned to working for Abbott Labs for about 13 years, and then another few years at a startup called Ceribell, which is now a public company in the United States. And then in 2022 I started kind of pivoting, doing my own projects. So most recently I've been working on a patient recruitment company that helps sponsors run clinical trials better and faster. And that company is called Trial Forward. So I've been doing that. And in my aside from my responsibilities, working with sponsors and sites of, with patient recruitment, I actually teach at San Jose State University in clinical research as well. So that's kind of my background in a small,
Amazing,
in a
amazing. Yeah,
nutshell.
thanks
Yeah.
for sharing. And you also host a podcast about clinical trials, the Clinical Trial
That,
Podcast, which is uh, another,
yeah,
similarity between
absolutely.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
And
started hosting this
before
podcast about 2017, 18, and it's been a great journey, and I love to like create content there. So yeah, it's called the Clinical Trial Podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms if people are interested in more resources in clinical research.
Amazing, amazing. And I mean, already you touched upon one of the biggest challenge in clinical trials right now. Now, your focus is about patient recruitment and patient identification. This is still one of the biggest challenges in clinical trials. Are there other challenges, and how you have experience on like overcoming this and dealing with this in your experience in your to day work?
Yeah, I think for me, my background all has been in project management, and I think a lot of the things that I did in my day job, you can call it, is like driving patient recruitment. As a study manager, the goal is to really support sites to enroll patients and get quality data. Those are like the two big objectives. I think in my experience, just working on the sponsor side and also like communicating with sites, the biggest challenge on the sponsor side is a lot of times the sponsors are just so far removed from the sites. They don't communicate enough with the sites. And what I mean by communication is really having this one-on-one conversation with the research coordinators, with the PIs, or maybe in a group setting where you are actually constantly getting their feedback. I think sponsors are sometimes afraid that if they ask for feedback, then they'll get too much feedback, which will then lead to protocol amendments. So yes, there is a balance between how much feedback you get and what feedback you decide to keep or not keep. But at least having that conversation will, the most recently, one of the things that's been on the top of my head is the more people, not more, but I think there's like at least you want a handful of people involved in your protocol development and your study execution, because everybody looks at things very differently. So the way you look at something is going to be very different than the way I look at. So I think collectively we can make something better together. I think if we just think, oh, we're the best and we are the ones who know everything about our therapy, about the disease, the disease, I think you're going to be at a loss. So I think conversations with sites are really, really critical in my mind. And some of the ways you do that is through investigator meetings. You can do that with virtual webcasts. You can do that with one-on-one site visits, one-on-one calls, even like just something really low tech, but really making sure you find the time to incorporate those conversations. Uh, and Yeah, I think understanding the clinical workflow at every single site is also important because I feel like I just worked on a project where we had like 12 different sites, and almost all sites had like slightly different workflows. So if the sponsor can really understand the clinical workflow at each of the sites, then you can actually support the sites better. And I feel like in this day and age when everybody wants to move very fast, I think if we don't really pause and understand what the unique challenges and opportunities are at each of the centers, then you're going to have a tough time recruiting patients in your study. Um, and then on the CRO, on the site side, I feel there's a lot of tools like there's social media marketing. People use advertising. They have their own EMR database. They can query and see what patients are eligible. I think the hard part is the research coordinator having the bandwidth to give these patients a call and saying, "Hey, are you interested in the study?" Or if the participants are actually interested in the study, like really following up on them and then getting just explaining them at the study at a high level. I think a lot of times, if you because that initial conversation you have with the participant, you're not going to go through the informed consent with them on the phone. You're just going to you'll have to explain in a few words or a few sentences. Here's what the study is about. We think you're eligible. So and so. Would you like to come in? Go through the informed consent process, or can we schedule time to do that? So
Yeah.
I think the coordinators have need that capacity to do that. And if they don't, then they're not like you can have all the best tools in the world, but if you don't have the people that can use those tools, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, how do you feel from the patient side as well? I mean, are they more willing to participate? Are they more curious? Is there some sort of I don't know, mistrust in participating to clinical trial, or do you feel like this has changed in the past year with your work?
I think personally, I haven't been so close to the patients to be honest, because I don't, in my job, I don't like really interact with them. But I know that people say there's mistrust in the healthcare system in general. And even if the patients have been burned once, like if they had a bad experience on a clinical trial one time, then they're going to carry that
Yeah,
forward for a long time, right? Or if they had a bad experience just in a clinical setting, the doctor or nurse or an administrator, then they're going to think that everything related to healthcare, including clinical trials, is bad, which might not be the case, but they may just assume that's the case. I think it's the job of the site and the sponsors, obviously supporting the sites, to build that trust, to build that relationship, and give patients the right tools to make an informed decision. I think
mm,
if you have those pillars, then I don't think it's even if somebody's been burnt before, you at least have an opportunity to explain your project to them and see if they're interested. I think human beings genuinely want to help other human beings. I think it's like very innate in our nature. So I don't think patients are against participating in clinical trials. I just think the industry has to do a better job of educating these patients about the studies and so on.
no, that's great. That's great. And I mean, also with your activity as a podcaster, I mean, the importance of communicating outside of our bubble, I would say, no, about people that already speak our language. And I feel, at least from my experience, that there has been a little bit of a barrier between who is actually working in clinical trials and the patients that participates in terms of understanding and as you said, educating. And I wanted to ask you, like, I mean, is there one of the reasons why you started also your podcast, or is I mean, what are the
What?
aims there?
Why did I start my podcast? Is that your question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, is if it is because you felt like there is
Oh,
because that is also the reason why I started my podcast, right?
oh,
I don't
my yeah, my
specifically about
rationale.
clinical trial.
I see. No, I started my podcast to. So I was working full time back then, and I'm still working full time. But I think I was trying to think. So I had some political challenges at work. Really trying to. I was doing a great job at work, and then I was not getting. I felt like I was not making progress in my career, and in fact, I was getting bad performance reviews, if anything. So I wanted to get my creative energy out there. And I said, this is a way for me to get my creative energy out there. So that's kind of where I started the blog. And then I kind of pivoted from the blog to the podcast a few years later. And I think with the podcast, my vision was that this is back in 2005, when I was starting to work at the CRO, and I was in my cubicle, working. And then I remember like wanting to take this ACRPC CRA exam. And and anyways, I think I was just trying to learn more about the industry. I just wanted to learn. And There's all these offices around me with glass doors, and there's people in these offices, and I'm trying to figure out what is it that they're talking about. What are the conversations happening in those offices? And I wanted to open those conversations up to the world, and I wanted to do that through this platform. So now, if you're in Germany, you can still hear a conversation with a very senior VP of clinical research, or and be part of that conversation, and listen to and understand what are the things that they care about, what are the things that they are thinking, and what's on their mind. So I kind of wanted to open that curtain up, and let people like see themselves, like what is happening behind those closed doors.
Amazing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can totally see that. And also, like, that enlarge that sense of community within us, and trying to get a little bit more visible outside, no? I mean, and also, like, make it more clear to people outside of what we do. And it is not always a closed door or a closed room, but we can have this conversation also. And maybe, I mean, people that are not from this world can have some I don't know, some
Yeah.
interest in that. And
That's for
yeah, I
sure.
mean,
But I think my main goal was to serve the people that were already in the industry. So people that
yeah,
were like junior in their role, they were just starting getting care. Was the start the CRO I worked at? They only hired like college graduates. So every time they hired all these college graduates, there's all these young people working, and a lot of people don't know what is happening around them. And I think it. I just wanted to unveil that for them through the podcast.
amazing, amazing. Okay, going back to the original topic. So we were talking about like challenges about clinical trial, and your main focus, which is the patient recruitment. You already mentioned solutions that are, as you said, like low tech, like talking and meeting with the site. But what about the high tech? So if we move in the more recent discoveries, more recent technology advancement like AI, machine learning. Do you see them and let's say how it is used, in particular for patient recruitment, but also for other challenges that you might have encountered in clinical trials?
Yeah, so I definitely think, we are seeing a huge shift in the way trials are getting conducted, and just using AI tools, not just for patient recruitment, but AI tools in the whole ecosystem, on the whole planet, to accelerate the way we go about doing things, right? It could be as simple as having a set of prompts and generating a really polished email, or using like that gets sent to sites. So a lot of times, like you're sending, like, typing all these emails manually, but if you had like a really nice AI prompt, you could generate that. And a lot of companies use Microsoft Copilot, and it's a it's a company approved software technology that you can use for AI. But I think also like using AI to really simplify a lot of the manual tasks that I think humans do. I think is there's definitely like, and I think clinical trials is heavily like high touch environment. So there's a lot of things you can pick along the way. And I think my goal is to like just take these tasks and then really automate them using technology rather than
Yeah.
like trying to. You don't need like something completely breakthrough, but there's a lot of little steps that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and how can you automate those through the use of AI. So
Mhm.
like we were talking about finding patients in the EMR database, so I'm sure like you can like have some sort of AI that sits on top of your EMR that's going to then tell you, you tell it like, okay, help me find all these patients with these parameters or these protocol inclusion exclusion criteria. The tool will be able to extract those patients and give you a nice spreadsheet, that you can then reach out to those patients. And so it's definitely going to fast track a lot of these manual things or things that took a really long time to do. um, so absolutely, I think there's even like with meetings, like a lot of times we're like people are in meetings like this, and we are taking notes, right? And I think that's obviously kind of almost like a thing of a past, because you can now use technology and AI to actually have really beautiful summaries of your notes that are available for you to refer later. I
Good.
mean, they might not be 100% accurate. You still have to review the tools, but you have to you can use AI for that. I'm seeing like a lot of the companies. I mean, they're definitely exploring, if not implementing AI across the board. So it's not like not a, shouldn't be
Mhm.
a surprise to
Yeah.
anybody that's listening to this. Um,
Yeah.
but I think being skeptical and being and embracing at the same time. Maybe that's the message I want to give. Like being skeptical, but also being embracing of the new technology that's in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, keeping always like as you said, the human touch, in particular when we are talking about clinical trials and in general healthcare, when you
Yeah.
have to deal with patients, with people that maybe suffer from some condition. So the human touch will always be needed. But again, these technologies are, as you said, changing the way we do stuff, everything, and in particular also the process of bringing new medicine to the market. And
Yeah.
I mean, outside of
I
patient
think.
recruiting, do you
Yeah,
see it
sorry.
applied somewhere? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but I had a train of thought there. So I think when I say low tech,
Mhm.
I mean like doing low tech things using like technology. You can actually do
Yeah,
a lot of the low tech things, but use technology to fast track your low tech stuff, right? And I think
of
that's
course.
where I feel it will be very beneficial to be able to do that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, with your question.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. No, no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, low tech doesn't always mean manual, but you can use like high tech to do less challenging task. And
Correct.
definitely AI is helping in that, right? I mean, making boring task automated would make it faster, would make it more efficient. Do you feel this outside of patient recruitment? I mean, it is applied in other steps of the clinical trial process, and also, do you see this as more of an
Yeah.
augmentation of what the human can do, or is going to be, I mean, the fear of being replaced by AI? Is it our reality is in the clinical trial world?
I don't know if it's a you. I don't think you're going to replace. I think humans are going to have different jobs for sure. Like you're not going to be doing what you did. I'll just use like protocol development and informed consent. Because my world is very close to the operational side of things, but we can also like talk about non-operational things. But if you use like protocol development or informed consent, like say informed consent, you're trying to put together a master informed consent template for a new clinical trial. You have a protocol, right? You have a informed consent template. Say you're a CRO or a sponsor, you can pretty much use AI to say, okay, can you please create this informed consent template for me for this protocol? right? You can feed your existing SOP approved informed consent template into an AI tool, and then feed your protocol, and then have it give you informed consent. You don't need months and months and months of, not months, but weeks, even, or even a week. Like, you could do this like pretty quickly. Yes, you have to probably clean it up and check everything is right, but you could fast track the development of study documents. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like, recently, I was working on a project where we decided not to go down that path, but doing translations, in different languages I feel like sponsors might still not be doing that, but it's really helpful to the patients, right? If you have your documents in like Arabic, if you're doing a trial in another, in a country that's in the Middle East. But we have documents in English, and now you're trying to translate them to Arabic. Yeah, you can use a translation agency, but you can also use AI to translate those for you, and then you can have an Arabic speaking person like spot check. Obviously, there's a need for certified translations and so on, but at least you can get a starting point to like get things organized a little bit around the with AI. So things can be done pretty quickly with the tools that we have today.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. And you also touch upon another important topic, which is the validation, because you mentioned that example with the translation that you have to do, but still you need to certify it. There are certified translators, and this makes it even more important when we talk about clinical trials, because the validation and the quality behind it, it's much more stricter and much more rigid, given the
Yeah,
fact that we are talking about human experimentation. And how do you feel the regulator are accepting these kind of new technologies? Are they,
yeah.
willing to collaborate, or you feel like, for example, for submission, for accepting these approaches, there is still a barrier, there is still a bottleneck there?
Yeah, so let me go finish the translation discussion. So the translation, I think, if like I people should not be afraid to like talk to your translation company and say, hey, can you use AI to translate the first thing, and then to reduce costs, or maybe like move things a little faster, and then, or maybe they're already using AI to do that, and then they have someone else just checking the whole document from start to finish, and making sure that it looks good. Going back to the follow up question you had about regulators, I think regulators primarily care about patient safety. That's like their number one goal. Like, they pretty much care about patient safety, and then they care about the effectiveness of the medical product, whether it's a drug or a device. So if your technology is going to increase the chances of a product being safe, then they are going to be fine. If it's going to decrease the chances of your product being safe, then they're going to be concerned. So you kind of have to just look at it from that lens, and then you have to help them mitigate any risks or new risks that might be introduced as a result of your technology. Whether it's an operational piece of the technology, or if it's like drug discovery, whatever it is, any sort of technology, or even like the technology that's built into medical products, if it's going to increase the likelihood of um, patient safety, then people are going to be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But okay. I mean that's an important thing. I mean the fact that of course the patient safety is I mean always at the first place for regulators, for ethical committee. That makes total sense, and it's important that. And here in Europe, with the EU Act, we are seeing this right now, because with this new regulation, we are going to see how these approaches are going to be applied, in particular in the healthcare, and how they're going to be limited or controlled.
EU what
Um,
did you say? EU what? In
the
what is it
the
called?
AI Act that is going to be placed in Europe for the regulator. I don't know if that in the US, how is the situation right now for
Yeah.
uh, regulation from like
Oh, I
the
see.
from the healthcare perspective. In Europe, we
Yeah.
will have this AI Act that is now getting into place, and
Oh, that's great.
how it is over there.
Yeah, I just saw it. I didn't know about this AI Act, so that's really interesting that it's being put together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's in the US. I feel like the FDA has done like a good job with some of the guidance documents, but obviously the regulator is going to be slightly behind. But there's still a lot of developments, in this space across the board.
Okay, no, no, yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. I mean, and every day there is a new, a new advancement, a new technology that comes. And
Yeah, that's right.
moving away from the AI for a minute, uh, there is also another like type of trial that is now, I think, in the last years after the pandemic, we had a rise of decentralized clinical trials. So I want to ask you if you had any direct experience with any of that, and if you can explain what they are, if you can tell me what they can differ, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of this type of trials.
Yeah, I think for the decentralized trials, I feel like when COVID hit, I think people want to try to do things differently and do them in the patient's home so the patient didn't have to travel. But I think overall, like my philosophy is, I think people are craving in real life interactions. So they want to go to the doctor's office. They want to be cared. They want to talk to another human being. I think not being isolated in their homes. So with that being said, I think yes, there's definitely like value in like doing a lot of the things decentralized, like through the patient's home or through remote ways. Like say if you have a medical device that can capture data in the patient's home and then transmit it over the cloud, that's great. Like the patient doesn't have to go to the clinic, to to do to provide continuous data. Basically, if it's in the patient's home, there can be continuous data that's being going up to the cloud. And but then if they have to see the doctor for a visit every 12 weeks or every 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever there might be, I don't think the patients really mind doing that so much, as long as
Mhm.
the process to get to the doctor's office is very efficient. I think they just don't
Yeah.
want to, like, if they're taking time off from work, they don't want to be having to drive to the doctor's office, then have to find parking. It's hard. Like, it's just a lot of like, it's challenging if it's going to be a busy clinic and there's not like a hospital, like a large academic hospital. It's going to be difficult to find parking. And then if they find parking, they want to be able to not wait in the lobby for a long time to see the doctor. Because sometimes the doctor is only seeing them for 10, 15, 20 minutes at most, but they have to do all these other things for an hour or more to be able to see their doctor. But I think decentralized. There's components of the decentralized trials that are still, I think, useful and important. Um,
Mhm.
but I think the patients also want to be seen by their provider in person. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
not in a clinical trial, but I'll tell you, like recently, I had a finger injury on two of my fingers in May, and then again, like in July. And in
Mhm.
May, I had this, and then I talked to my doctor over a remote call, like you and I are having today. And I showed him my finger, and then obviously it was very hard for him to like know exactly how I was feeling because he couldn't touch my finger and he couldn't tell
Yeah.
like how. But then he said, "Come in if this doesn't improve." And then I injured my second finger, so I went and saw him in person. And obviously, the in person was way better. Like he spent like a good 20 minutes with me, and we talked about things. So I just think like if patients are going to need like um, diagnosis or things that they want to talk like in real world, it's just going to be nicer to do the in person. But I
Yeah.
don't know if that answers it. But there's components of decentralized, like a lot of the digital workflows that can always be created to do different tasks in the clinical trial ecosystem. um like to drop off
Mhm.
samples. I think that's like another example. Like, I think it's just really a painful thing for the patient to like go to the clinic to drop off samples of urine or whatever, samples that they have to give for a clinical study. But if there's like a service that does that in a dependable way, and there's like companies like FedEx that do a really good job, I think. uh but I also think those things can be um decentralized per se. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how, I mean, when you set up a clinical trial, when you have to organize it, also like the from an operational perspective, how do you balance the need, as you say, of a patient to be seen in person, and at the same time the burden on the patient that might prevent him to participate in a clinical trial? What are the
Yeah,
strategies?
I think the patient burden is definitely like a big consideration. Like anything you do, like one of the things is like, so one of the projects I'm working on, we have patient reported outcomes. So if, there's 10 patient reported outcomes, and those 10 forms are going to be filled out 5 times, let's just say. So 50 forms, right? So that's a lot of patient reported outcomes this patient has to fill out. So how can you, if you're not going to pay them for their time, then is it fair for you to demand like all this data, or are you okay with missing half the data and like just getting 50% of the data? And I think those are the decisions that you have to make, when you're trying to put your strategy together. It's like, okay, yeah, you know what, we're going to be okay if we get 50% of the data. We don't need 100% of the data because we're not paying the patients for this, for their time. But I think it all stems from patient burden. So I think some visits are more involved and they have to be on site, right, um, to see their doctor or their coordinator. But I don't know if there's like one answer. I think you have to see the therapy, the device or the drug, and then um, and then I think what procedures you're doing at that visit. So if a
Mhm.
lot of those procedures are like, oh, just come in and um, pick up your medical product at, every 12 weeks, then that thing could be easily like, you don't have to go to the doctor's office to pick up your medication. Maybe it just gets delivered to you to your house.
Yes.
But if it's like, oh, we need to do all these labs, and then we need to you know even if you want to do all these labs, it could be done closer to the patient's home. But then you have to like review those labs with the patient and then make changes to, their regimen or so on. Whatever the case might be based on the study design. I think if it's more involved, then they absolutely need to be there in clinic. Um, but yeah, I really think it depends on the phase of the study. Like phase one studies are like are shorter and like they have to be there in person, right? Versus like phase two, three, four, they could be more decentralized per se.
Okay, okay, good point. And do you feel like also there are therapeutic areas that are more challenging, and which one for applying this type of plan?
Uh, I think oncology is I've done like oncology trials only for a couple of years, but I suspect that being the most hardest thing to do remotely. But I still there might be opportunities. I think those patients also are want to be cared and they want their cancer to go away. So they
Yeah,
are always wanting to see their nurse or doctor as much as they can, and if they have the energy and the strength to do that. Trying to think, like if it's like a medical device procedure like an implant that's going in your body, you're not going to be able to do that remotely. Like you have to go to the hospital or the clinic to do
also,
that procedure. That's why it's kind of hard to generalize this thing. So I don't know if it's by therapeutic necessarily. It could be just by the medical product that you're trying to test. It might be just dependent on the medical. So if it's like a diagnostic medical product, you're going to more likely be able to do a lot of things in a decentralized way. Versus if it's a treatment based, interventional product, then it's going to be harder.
yeah, yeah, of course, and also like yeah, I mean the type of treatment. I mean it depends on the schedule. It depends on like how often you have to take it. As you said, definitely it will change. It's just that I mean, as you say, the importance of not being too, heavy on the patient and trying to make their life easier so that they are more willing to participate. And do you feel like the use also of like not for the decentralized trial, but in general of real world data is now more let's say, I mean, I'm using this for one of our model in the AI, so the real world evidence from patients to try to define this sort of like map of where are the patients and how can I can reach them better. Are they currently, I mean, broadly used? Is that something that is helping the adoption of this type of data? There are a lot of providers, but how is the process there?
Yeah. So the are you talking about before before the product is on the market during recruitment, or or like after the product is on, like, approved by the regulator?
Yeah, I mean, actually both, because of course, in one case, you would be also like an aspect of market access and like uh, prescription and stuff, but it can be also used before the study to identify the patients that can actually participate to your trial.
Yeah, I worked with a company to do that not too long ago. I just thought it was not very effective, but that was like just one instance that I had. Because what happens is, like, say you find a hospital using AI and saying, okay, here are all the patients, right? That this hospital or clinic has, right? To to potentially enroll in your study. Here's like a high density patient population of then you have to talk to the PI, and then you need to make sure that the PI is interested in the study, because he or she may not be interested in the study. And even if they are interested in the study, then you have to get over the budgetary hump. Like, what if there's contract challenges and so on? There's staffing challenges, like, do they have a research coordinator, or like, can the coordinator, like, do they have the bandwidth to take on another study? um I just think, um, I remember, like, we reached out to four sites or maybe more uh, for a study, and then only one center we could like move forward with. I think that, I mean, it seems like success rate is high, but even then that site didn't enroll a ton of patients, and it was okay. I think it helps get those site lists faster. Like, here are the potential sites that can, it might like maybe fast track your which hospitals you reach out to for potential patients. But then it doesn't. I don't know how much. I think you have to talk to the doctors. You definitely, I think, a conversation with the doctors is a must before you like move forward with the project at that center. I feel like that step, a lot of people just miss out. I think we're just so robotic in the way we go about doing trials sometimes. Like, oh, we're going to send a feasibility questionnaire, and then they're going to send the questionnaire back, and then we're going to go to the next step, which is the budgets and the contracts and the IRBs and all that. But I think even before all that, you kind of want to talk to the doctor. So one of the things I tell people is like doing a 20-minute call with the potential site and say, hey, let's talk about this project, and just like, I want to just understand what you think about it, and then
Yeah.
collectively decide if it's the right fit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, the human touch that cannot be replaced by any technology. I mean, also because I mean, doctors can be, maybe approached by different clinical. I mean, like different
Correct.
sponsor, different CEO. So they might want to decide, and that can make the difference, right? To have an active and proactive site rather than someone that doesn't recruit your
Yeah.
patient and to
Yeah.
keep them engaged as well.
Yeah, so the real world evidence is also beneficial post approval, because now, like, at least I think in Europe, there's a requirement for the post market clinical follow up data by EU MDR, which is the European Medical Device Regulation. And I think in order to do that, you could set up your own registry to collect that data and outcomes, in the real world. But or you could lean on a third party database, or you could do like a government database, and you could mine data from there on patient outcomes, and then share it with the regulator that these patients are doing. Uh, the device or the drug still is effective and safe.
Mm. So you mean also like, yeah, for post-market study also to follow up on
Correct.
those patients after they have done the clinical trial. Yeah, but also like I've seen it also like the real world evidence being used, as I said before, for like market access strategy. So like to identify the regions where these
Mhm.
drugs are most prescribed, so then they can be more successful in the market, because then I mean, if it is a medical device or or a drug, whatever, but in at the end of the day is also a matter of business, and making sure that of course if you develop this drug, you develop for the right market, and you don't want to
Right.
do maybe a clinical trial in a country where there is no interest in the market. And do
Correct.
you also look at these aspects when you collaborate to conduct clinical trials? Is it something that has an impact in the research, and how much?
Which aspects are you talking about?
The fact that many people might not have the idea of the market associated with a specific treatment they are developing.
Oh, I don't know if I have experience with that. Like they're developing a treatment, but they don't know what market it's going to serve.
It's going to be, yeah, exactly. Or I mean, when these type of analyses are conducted, because in the preclinical phase you have no interest whatsoever. I mean, in these kind of things, of course, like it is more about you develop a new drug. Of course, you need to know if it is something that people would need, if there is an unmet medical need. But when the market strategies for new products are developed, are they already, let's say, embedded in the clinical trial development, when the product is still not approved, but and then the decision to go to a country rather than another is affected by this.
Um, yeah, I'm not too sure about that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Um, yeah, so you're saying, let me understand this properly. So you're saying if so somebody's developed a medical product, they and whether they're incorporating strategies in their clinical trials to then decide which commercial direction they're going to take, or like how they're going to.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that probably happens a lot. I mean, there's only like not only, but there's few big markets in the world, like the U.S. or Europe, possibly Japan. You know,
Mm.
those are like probably. It depends where the innovation also happened, like the founders or I mean, how what stage the company is at. Also the regulation. Sometimes some governments will accept foreign data to give you approval. Others will want local data to give you approval. So you could like have a strategy around like, is this government going to accept foreign data? If it is, then you don't need to do a trial in that region. You could submit a foreign data, to that country for approval. So I think that's one thing. Also reimbursement. So yeah, regulatory approvals are one thing, but the reimbursement landscape will be very different from one country to another. So I think just understanding that landscape is a whole nother ball game, right? And then
Yeah,
I think then you kind of figure out as a team, okay, there's reimbursement, there's regulate. This is the regulation, this is the reimbursement, and then you come up with a combined strategy on how you want to grow your company.
okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I
usually
do
those
tell
those
people
things. Yeah.
when they design the trial, you want to try to capture reimbursement data though. I think, or like the quality of life data on the participants. So if you are going to, yes, you're going to do all the clinical data, but I think capturing quality of life data is what's going to give you the reimbursement. So if you don't, if there's quality of life data, if there is data related to savings to the hospital systems, I think those things are important. Like though, or like the ease of use of the medical products and medical devices, how easy it was to use the device relatively to the current standard of care, right? Because that those things are really important. Because if you save time, if there's no repeat hospitalization, the length of stay for the patients was shorter. I think those are the things that are going to save money for the payer. And if that's kind of when you're going
Yeah,
to, yeah, that increases the likelihood of your product being adopted.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I asked. Like, this is where the stage that you want to make
Yeah.
sure that your clinical trial, of course, gets approved, is successful, then your product, whatever it is approved. But then you want the product to be accepted, you want to be adopted by patients. So then you have to make sure that there is a, yeah, either, yeah, a saving on the, hospital or in the healthcare system, or like an improvement, a significant improvement in the quality
Yep.
of life. And there are objective measurement also, for example, quality of life. Are there, like, how does it work? Like, is it usually measured by surveys, or it is more like a
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah, surveys, I would say patient reported outcomes are like a way to
Mhm.
measure quality of life. It could be, trying to think what other ways. You could do like not just patient surveys, but also physician surveys. And
Yeah,
you could like, and then also we talk about surveys, but also interviews. Like you could interview doctors and you could interview patients. So that's a lot of data that you can get, between the interviews and the surveys, for both patients and doctors.
yeah, 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 yeah. And when you do this, you usually see, of course, the question will not be the same between the physicians and the patients, but I mean, how usually physician respond to this kind of surveys? I mean, for them, what are the main? I mean, the most important aspects? Like, is the quality of life considered for patients a lot, or it is more about the efficacy and the safety of the product?
I think it's probably everything, and every doctor is going to like care things about things differently. But at the end of the day, the product should work, and that's what you want. It should work better than the standard of care, and then
Yeah,
the current gold standard, and then it's safe. I think it has to be safe. And I think the patient's quality of life is also important. So I feel like it's all of the above. I don't think it's like one thing, but not the other. I don't think you can compromise on the safety for sure. I feel like that will be number one. And
yeah.
then, because in some patients, like say, let's just use an example. So if you did uh,
Mhm.
like a valve for the heart, right? So some patients, you can do open heart surgery or you could implant the valve, right, through percutaneously or so on. So if you did that, but some patients are just so fragile that they can't go through surgery. So even the device might not be as effective, but it's still safer, more safe than doing surgery.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So in that case, people may choose to do, not do the surgery and go down this path, So I would say safety comes first, and then I think the third one is the quality of life. But
Yeah,
again, surgery patients that undergo surgery are known to have better quality of life.
yeah.
You know, so can your quality of life be comparable to that of patients that undergo surgery? And I think that's the story that you have to try to explain.
That makes sense. That makes sense totally. Okay. And moving back to the new emerging technologies, I mean, we talked about AI, we talked about decentralized. You touched upon like remote medical device and real time patient monitoring. What else is currently going on? What is some exciting for you? Some exciting technology that will make an impact in optimizing the clinical trial work.
A piece of technology that you think is going to make the that I'm excited about for in the clinical trial space?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Something that you might have come across in your experience, or something that you think is going to make an impact.
Trying to think if there is any. I do think the document like generation in clinical trials, like we talked about protocol informed consent earlier. I think those things take a lot of time, which then delays the startup. I think my goal is to like get the trial started as quickly as possible and enroll them as quickly as possible. So if we can shorten the startup timeline as much as possible, I think that, and that includes the clinical trial design and kind of finalizing that. And I think, you know, if those protocols can be written a bit faster, and easily, I think it saves a lot of time
How
for
yeah, how long does it usually take to get, let's say, from the
it.
design to the approval on average?
It really varies, right? Design to approval of the protocol, you mean, or the product?
Yeah, yeah. I mean the protocol writing process, and
Yeah,
of course, then when you will go to submission, then you have like back and forth with the
yeah, I
like
think
with
it can
the
take anywhere. I mean, it can take at least 4 weeks to get this protocol on an
mm,
average to be written and finalized. Obviously, it depends on the size of the organization and how many people are
yeah,
reviewing the protocol. There's a lot of things like that. But I think, give or take, it can take 4 weeks or maybe a little bit longer. If you have a statistician that's involved, you're gonna like need more time to include any stats
mhm,
aspects on the protocol. So 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, is a good estimate. I don't know if there's one piece of technology that I'm excited about. I think I've known about this company, Florence Healthcare. I think they have really awesome like operational workflows for clinical trials. So I think that's like a product that I think is great.
mhm,
I think there's other companies like doing I'm a big fan of products that are like that stand the test of time,
mhm,
rather than something that's new and shiny. And then I'm not usually like I'm not an early adopter, I should say. I kind of tend to come like as I get more confidence in the product. I mean, I will adopt things, but I will also be skeptical, and I won't like. I'll probably have a backup plan because I know if this technology fails, then I have a backup plan uh,
so,
to do that, right? Um, so yeah, I
yeah,
think
yeah, of
those
course.
are yeah. Because there's a lot of new stuff, and I think it's not about the technology not being good. The technology is probably very good, but then the company runs out of money or goes out of business, and then you're stuck, right? So I think those
Yeah,
are the mitigation strategies. Also, I want the products, like any product, technology product, as a researcher, I want it to be pretty um, solid in terms of like it's safe, it's secure, easy to use. I think design, I think, is very important. And I think that's something we don't talk about so much in clinical trials. But the design of the actual medical product, the design of the patient experience, that what is the patient
mhm,
going to feel? What are the research staff at the site going to feel when they interact with anything that you create as a sponsor representative? I think we don't talk about those things at all in research. Like I think there's a company, I'm trying to remember their name, that has blanking out on their name, but I've interviewed them on that podcast. But they've created these really awesome software to do patient reported outcomes. And the experience to complete PROs is a nightmare sometimes for patients. Like there's a lot of it's very difficult to complete PROs sometimes. But this
yeah,
company has made it like very easy, and the workflow is really nicer. So I think if there's software that can help improve the patient and the site experience and the sponsor experience, I think those things are always, I feel like, highly valued,
mhm,
and useful to the ecosystem, because a lot of the
yeah,
pillars have been figured out. I mean, the regulations are changing, but like you still need to do informed consent. It's not like you don't have to do the informed consent process. It's not going to go away, so that's still there. Now you just have to figure out how can you make it better and smoother for the people that are involved.
yeah. That's the point, right? I mean, yeah, you cannot get rid of certain aspects of certain step in clinical trial by using the technology to make it faster, to make it easier, and
Yes,
less. I mean, like more efficient and less heavy on the patient and on and on the clinics as well. And
correct.
I mean, you also touch upon a very interesting point about the fact that sometimes these new technology are developed by new company that they might run out of money, or they might get out of the market or change focus. And you mentioned about having always a plan B or a mitigation strategy. Is that probably one of the biggest barrier to the adoption of this side of this new technology? The fact that there is still a lot of not mistrust in the technology itself, but on the company that develops those.
It's not, I don't think that's the barrier. I think the barrier is people not wanting to change. People don't like to change. They don't want anything new. They're just like, oh, there's a new learning curve in this whole thing, and they don't want to touch it. The default answer is, well, we have to check if it's compliant with the regulation, the new technology, and then somebody has to do all that legwork to figure out if it's compliant or no, right? So I think if the software companies are like proactive about addressing that, and I think they are, but still, I think there's always like, oh, it won't work for our SOPs or it won't work for the regulation. I think there's always this excuse of like why, you know, like using regulations as a way of like not um, moving forward with something. I think that's always there. And then the second thing is, like I said, people are just not wanting to change because then they have to learn a new tool, new technology, and there's a bit of a heavy lift to do that. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently about just doing a qual. Have you heard of this? You've heard of SurveyMonkey, maybe, but there's also like a
Oh, yeah.
survey tool called Qualtrics, Qualtrics, and we something happened. Anyways, we were trying to figure out if we should use Qualtrics or no, but people had never used it and they were afraid to use Qualtrics. And I'm like, well, you can figure it out. Like you could create an account, test it out, and it's not like
Yeah.
going to be impossible. And there's a lot of helpful videos and materials that you can read on their support website to learn how to do what you want to do. But I think
Yeah.
it takes work and effort, and I think you're if you as an organization are willing to commit to that, then I think you're going to have a hard time kind of adopting these
Yeah.
technologies.
And do you feel also there is a sort of a generational gap there with like the digital born generation now getting into work and I don't know, or you feel like
Mm.
this is not much of a difference?
Yeah, I think there might be definitely people that are used to technology more are they're more comfortable like trying things out versus like
Mm.
some people are like, oh, I don't even want to touch my app on my phone because I'm afraid that somebody will steal my money from my bank account. So it really depends on how comfortable you are with the technology. But yeah, I think there might be generational gap, but I also feel like there might be people that are more adventurous out there that are trying
Yeah,
to that are able to use the technology. I think there's other things, not just the comfort, but also like if older patients have like a hard time like clicking on things on the screen. So people we don't talk about those like things, right? Because you just assume, yeah, they're fine with the technology, but then it's like their touch. Like I was just talking to my uncle a few weeks ago, and he had trouble like clicking on the iPhone and the little
yeah,
buttons. So he's like 80 plus years old, and I think for him, if if he was in a clinical trial and he had to complete all these PROs on his phone, he couldn't do it
don't
because
do it.
and there goes our decentralized trial out the door because now he
Yeah,
can't click on the
yeah,
buttons and it's not working for him, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and
so
you have to
those
think
things have
about
to
the
be
user experience as well. No, I mean it's not just
yes,
sometimes
right,
you have the best technology in the world, but then you have to be usable by the people that needs to use it, and not everyone can be as tech savvy as anyone else, and it depends. And
yeah.
where do you see this going, like moving forward? Like if you have to, I don't know, pretend to have a crystal ball and see the future of clinical trials in 10 years, or like where you would like to see the clinical trial field moving in the next 10
I
years.
I think for me, one of the things I just feel like this whole CRO model needs to be disrupted. I think the CRO model is ripe for disruption. I think I've been
Yeah,
saying this for many years. I've not many, but like at least the last 10 years. I feel that the role of the CRA is going to change a lot, quite a bit. I just think it's not sustainable the way things are going right now. I Just the whole old model of monitoring is obviously has been displaced with risk-based monitoring efforts. So I think all these things are like the CRO. Definitely, I think sponsors are going to want more in person, like more connection with their sites. And I'm curious to, yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm excited about. I think
Mhm.
um, I think sponsors having direct relationship with the sites is what I think is going to definitely, like, I think
Mhm.
you know going to be there. And I think it's in the best interest of the sponsors to do that, because they can um, the people that are enrolling in their trials are also their customers.
Yeah.
So because
Yeah.
these doctors are the ones going to buy the medical products, so it's good for them to like get to know their sites better. Um, I think the CRO model is fine, but I think it's kind of gotten out of control because of like greed. People wanting to make as much money as possible without providing the high level of service and quality that needs to be provided.
Well, I mean that's a yeah, that's a great prediction. And I mean CRO have been leading the game, at least in the past years. And this is probably going to change. And do you feel like this new technology are going to speed up this process, help this process, if you see this happening, or the CRO, for example, will adapt and become not replaceable by using this technology?
I think the CROs, I think things are going to go faster, not because of the CROs being or not being involved. It's just the nature. I think the technology, and I think the market is going to demand a more, uh, more speed. So I think that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Sometimes things just going to take time. Like, it's not going to be like super fast to, I mean, you still
Hmm.
have to enroll patients in your trial, and that takes, that's going to take its course a bit. Like, if you're trying to follow up patients for 1 year, it's going to take 1 year to follow up. You can't fast track that process, but you can improve the quality of the data that's get collected over that 1 year with the use of technology, right? And I think that, and then that's going to be helpful. Uh, I am also seeing a lot of the medical on the device side, medical device, a lot of the medical devices that are from the 1950s, they're all getting like digitized in some way with like machine learning. And I know we didn't touch on that too much, but I think with AI, they're going to be able to now get smarter devices, things that weren't smart. Honestly, I'm not like the best person to talk about like the future overall, but I feel like there is I mean, at a macro level, there's the guy named Kevin Kelly, and he does general predictions about the future, like the next 30 years. Uh,
Wow.
he has an amazing book called The Inevitable: Understanding the 12 Technological Forces that will shape our future. So I recommend people check this. I read this book in 2017, so it's been a while. But I think if people are interested in like understanding the future and like what trends and so on, uh, I'm more of a foundational guy. Like, let's get the foundations right, and then everything else
Mhm.
will follow. But yeah,
Okay.
obviously technology is shaping a lot of things. We're going to change, evolve over the years.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. And I mean, as a conclusion to this episode, what advice would you give to someone new to this field, or a young scientist, or someone that is about to enter this world, like then this career? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been like being able to work with other people. I think you need to figure out. I think you can be like a really smart person, but if you cannot work with other people as in a team, then you're going to struggle. So whatever it's going to take to improve your skills in that area of being able to communicate better, to be a better team member, to kind of um, figure out how to collaborate, persuade, negotiate. All those skills are going to be really critical. So if you're young, I think you've learned a lot of things in college, a lot of the theoretical knowledge or in school, and you understand the science. You'll get all this, but I think being able to work with people, that's number one, and then being able to work with technology, like that's kind of been the theme of our episode, right? So and you don't have to learn all the pieces of technology. Maybe it's like one or two things. Like, if you're going to be involved in statistics or data science, then maybe you need to learn R. really well, or Python. Like maybe learning like one programming language and becoming really good at it, I think will then help you in other areas. So I would say those two things: getting along with people and then learning like a piece of technology. There's a concept called like skill stacking. So you stack one skill on top of the other, and then you have like a nice little pancake that you can lean on.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Always like it is a continuous learning process, and it's always good to, I mean, to advise young people to keep their curiosity, to keep their willing to learn also, and connect with people. Okay, I mean, I think we covered a lot of different aspects here, and an amazing view from you, Kunal. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us, your expertise. I first of all thank all the people that are listening, and I advise you to go and check Kunal on his LinkedIn profile, or if you have any website that you want to share, something that people can find about your work, and they might reach out to you. Uh,
Great.
we can always put that, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
And thanks to you, Kunal, for participating. Thanks for everyone listening, and speak soon.